fish is a maggot feeder. I've been brought up with it ever since I were in, I don't know, in my 20s when feeder fishing started. Maggot feeder were a great way of catching fish, and before pellets and everything like that, it was perhaps one of the only ways of catching fish. And even today it's still a great way of catching fish like that. You see, I've got a better fish there. Oh, what's this? Yep, another skimmer or an hide. But it is a fantastic way, and but there's some tips that really you need to follow. So what I'm going to show you, oh, nice fish. I can't make my mind up what it is. This, it might be a perch, might be a big billy. But it's a nice fish anyway, and this is not maggot feeder. And so I'm going to tell you 10 of my favourite tips maggot feeder fishing. I don't know what this is. I think it's a perch. This, it was a good bite and you'll put rod in, but it's not moving side to side, so that tells me it could be a big billy. But it's a good fish, a pound fish. Have a look what it is. Oh, it's an hide, a great big hide. Look at that. Hidey eye. Look at them. Nothing wrong with them, is there? Eh? Look at that. You can see that maggot feeder, look. Look at that. How nice is that? Beautiful that, isn't it? You can see this, we've got two red maggots in with red sensite dye in it. Look at that. Beautiful that. So, maggot feeder fishing. There's some great little tips that I've, like I said, over the years that I've done. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to show you. So the first thing is, when do I use a maggot feeder? Well, it's quite simple really, when the fish want it. But the trouble is, we've got a lot of these commercials now, and a lot of it's pellet fishing and corn fishing. But there's certain times of the year that the fish love maggots. And winter fishing, like today, when it's cold and it's icy, there's not a better bait for catching fish, and that is maggots. And it's easy through a maggot feeder. There you go. So the first little tip is the feeder itself. You get different maggot feeders, but for me, if I'm putting maggots in a maggot feeder, the best one, without a shadow of a doubt, is that little beauty. That one, the black cap, what we call the black cap. They're just perfect. They're just casts in a straight line. They've got different weights on. You open it up, put your maggots in, and the black cap goes back on. The line comes through the centre. They just do everything that you want. Cast in a straight line, they go to the bottom, and the maggots come out. Now there's certain things that I do with them, and one is the size. What size do I do? As you can see, there's two sizes there. I think that's the mini, and that's the small one there. So when I'm fishing normal maggot feeder fishing, I'll use one of them too. This time of year it's cold, so you might think I'm going to use a little one. But the trouble is, a lot of people don't realise this, is that when you fill your maggots and you fill that, the maggots don't come out. I want the maggots to come out either as it's falling down, or they can riddle out when they're on the bottom. But if you fill that, it takes them longer to come out. So what I prefer to do is use the next size up, and you might think, oh, that's too big, too many maggots in there. I only half fill it. So you can actually shake them like that, and what happens is, because there's air around the maggots and everything, they actually fall through the water, and they're coming out as they fall through the water. So always don't pack your maggots in because they don't come out. It's amazing, and the only time they come out is when you pick your feeder up, when you're retrieving it, the pressure of the water hitting the feeder forces the maggots out, so you finish up getting maggots all the way to where you've been fishing. But I want them to come out where you're fishing. So don't put as many in, and what happens is then, as it's falling through the water, they can riddle quicker and they'll come out in your peg where you want them to go. That's one thing. So sometimes I use a bit bigger feeder than I would normally want, but it's so the maggots actually come out. And to make them come out even better, what I do in a lot of mine, I drill the holes bigger. Now, on these black caps, they're big holes anyway, they're quite big holes, but on lots of maggot feeders you get, they're not, they're really small. And the maggots just won't come out until you're winding in and the pressure forces them out. So I get a drill and I drill them even bigger than what they are there. And it's amazing that makes a difference. Drilling the holes, making them bigger so the maggots come out of the feeder even quicker. Because I want them to come out where I'm fishing. I don't want them to come out as I'm pulling it back. So the feeder is really important. One, the type and the way that you can adapt it to the style of fishing that you're going to do. So that's what I do, and all I do when I put that on the line, I just attach it with a swivel, an American style swivel, so it clips on and off, so I can put a bomb on if I want a different size feeder. I can change it while I'm fishing. So the feeder is really important, but don't just go and buy one. Make sure that it's going to do what you want it to do. And maggot feeder fishing, it's so important that the bait comes where you're fishing and not when you're pulling it back. That's really, really important. Right, one of the things with any style of feeder fishing is the length, the hook length. And maggot fishing is no different, and it's all about the species that you're usually catching. I mean, at the moment it's I'm getting a few bites, and you'll see when I come in that I've got a really short hook length on. And one of the reasons I've got a short hook length is because I'm getting some bites. So the theory is, I'm not even sure what this is to be honest. Is it another hide? Yeah, it is, look. Oh no, it's a skimmer. And Jimmy Rimmer, look at that, pounder. Not wrong with that. So we're catching roach, hide, skimmers, all on a maggot feeder. But you can see that that's quite short. It's only 30 centimetres. And the reason for that is because I'm getting bites. The fish are coming to the feeder, so I'm shortening it off. If I wasn't getting any bites, I'd make that longer. And if the fish are off the bottom and in the surface, I'd certainly make it longer. But at the moment, when they're coming to the feeder, shorten it off and you get more bites. And you get more positive bites. So it's all about how the fish are feeding. So if they're feeding and they're coming to the feeder, short hook length. If they're not, longer hook length so it's away from the feeder, and that makes a difference. For example, when we go to Ireland, we're fishing 5-6 foot hook lengths because the fish are in mid-water and we put floating maggots on, so they sink slower. And that's, look at that, 30 centimetres. Now, if I won't get any bites, that'll be longer. But the fact I'm catching, it's amazing that when they're coming to the feeder, when they're coming to bite, it makes a massive difference to the length of the hook length. So if you're not fishing a feeder match and it's basically any style, then one of the nicest ways of catching is to loose feed maggots and fish a bomb over the top. And it's worth trying both the feeder and the bomb. That's one of the reasons why I have an American snap on it, so I can put a bomb on it as well, so I can chuck on me loose feed. So what I tend to do is I always have a catapult and feed a loose feed line, and that'll be usually where the maggots will go with the wind and everything like that. And all I'll do, I'll just loose feed, keep loose feeding, then every so often I might either cast an empty feeder over it, which you can do, or I can change it with a bomb because I've got an American snap on, then I can cast over that. When I'm fishing for roach and generally that style of silverfish, maybe perch, loose feeding is usually better. But of course, lots of places you can't loose feed where you want to fish, so that's when you have to use a feeder. So it's a combination of both, but I'll normally always have a loose feed line in as well as where I'm fishing with a feeder, just to give me two options And at the end of the day, the fish might just want them falling down, especially if you're roach and perch fishing. So it does make a massive difference. So don't be afraid. Loose feed where you can chuck a bomb or an empty feeder over it, and then you've got your other option where you're casting your maggot feeder. So you've got giving yourself two options of fishing. That's if it's not a feeder only match. Now, so basically all I'm going to do, when winding, check my bait, and if I've got to change it, I'll change it. But to fill the feeder, all I'm going to do, I'm going to take the black cap off, and I'm going to put what I think is right. I never ever fill it. I always sort of half fill it. So like I said, when it's falling through, it pushes the maggots out of the holes. Very, very rarely I will fill it because they don't come out. They only come out when you're winding back then. And I pick my spot, turn towards target, bring it, just cast it in like any other feeder, plop, it's going to the bottom, put the rod down, sink the line, and then the position of the rod is, I like to have it, I like to see like a little pull. I don't like to have it in front of me, I like to have it to the side with no bending rod, as slack as possible but the line tight, and I'm positioning it and waiting for any indications or bites. Now then, when you're fishing for silverfish, a bite can come at any time. So like today's a really cold day, I know I'm not going to get many bites. I'll fish it to my right because I'm more comfortable that way. Personally, I'm more comfortable. So I have it to my right, I have probably a 70-degree pull in it, and when I get a bite it'll either rattle like that or it'll just pull round if it's usually a perch or a skimmer or something like that. But I don't like a bend in it, I like the tip slack, and I'm looking for any indication. It's not a carp bite that's going to go like that. Usually you get a little pull or a little tap, but you know it's a bite. On cold days like this, for me, it's perfect setup. I don't like to hold the rod, but when I'm fishing and I'm getting lots and lots of bites, I always hold the rod. But I always change the angle of the rod round. And what I do then, I fish it that way. And I fish it that way. When I'm getting lots of bites, I can cast out and I can put it down and I can fish it that way and I can hold it. And because my arm is bent like that, I'm straight into the fish. So quicker fishing, I want to be doing that. So I always fish it to my left. When I don't get many bites, I don't need to use my arm the same, so I can just pick it up and pull into the fish that way. When I'm not getting more, I'm more comfortable this way, but when I'm getting lots of bites and I'm casting in, I'm getting instant bites, I prefer, because my arm is working better that way. So I always turn around and fish to my left. That's when I'm getting lots of bites and I hold the rod. So if I don't hold the rod, it's to my right. When I'm holding the rod, I put it to my left. It's just what I do. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but when I'm getting lots of bites, I use the angle of my arm so I can strike like that. But even that way, I'm always looking for that 70-degree pull between the feeder and your tip. That's really important to me. The further I go that way, I haven't got as much pull. I can't see as many indications. I know I'm a bit old school when it comes to that, but that's the way that I fish. So when I'm not getting a lot of bites and I don't want to hold the rod, and you might think, well, why don't you want to hold the rod? Well, I don't want to strike at daft things. Because when you're not getting many bites, you're leaving it in longer, you've got to be more patient. If you're holding it, you tend to strike at indications, but when you're getting lots of fish, you're all right striking at them indications. So that's why I fish that way, and because it's what I call quick fishing basically. So when I'm not getting many this way, to my right, when I'm getting lots, to my left. Oh, look at that. Oh, wow. Oh, look at that. Pound and a half, that. Look at that. Look at that. How good's that? So my turtle tattle, which is my setup, is as standard and as basic as I can get it. I don't like extra things on that you don't need on your line with. I know some people do, I don't. So basically, my real line is 023 Sublime line. I'm fishing for silverfish. I'm not fishing for carp. So all I do then is that goes on to, I put my feeder on with a quick change snap, an American style snap, and the reason for that is I can take that feeder on, off, different sizes feeder, or a bomb. I can change it. That's free running on the line, as you can see, because most fisheries I go to are free running, so I have to do it. Then, one of my favourite bits of fishing equipment, quick change bead. I love quick change beads. You might think, well, why don't you do it the other style, where you have the shot on and everything? Well, I don't need to. I'm fishing a commercial, I don't need to. So the idea of that is a swivel runs onto the bead and it protects it bouncing up and down. Quick change bead comes in 2 pieces, so I can put hook length on and off. And you might think, oh, why do you want to keep changing your hook lengths? Well, when you're maggot feeder fishing, what happens is that as the bait's falling through, the fish sometimes come off the bottom, sometimes they feed on the bottom. So you can bet your bottom dollar that during a 5-hour competition you will have to change that hook length at different times, depending on how the fish are feeding. When you're getting lots of bites, it'll be nearer the feeder, so it'll be a short one, and when you're not getting as many bites, lengthen it so that the hook bait is away from the feeder. So a quick change bead enables me to put it on and off, and that's my simple setup. The hook length is 010 and the hook size is an 18. So I can fish single maggot or double maggot. It gives me the options. If I'm getting lots and lots of bites, lots and lots of fish, I might put maybe an 012 and maybe a size 16 on. But usually an 18 covers everything. So an 010 to an 18, single and double maggot, and that's the setup. And it's as simple and as basic as that. I see people with links on and everything like that. I don't think you need that personally, but that's the way I fish. One of the things about the feeder, a little tip I'm just going to give you. When it's the winter, it don't come into it because the maggots are hardly moving. So when you put the maggots in the feeder, they don't riddle out easier. That's why I drill the holes and make them bigger sometimes. I mean, I'm holding that now and they're not coming out. But when it's summer and it's warm and the maggots are riddling like mad, what happens is as you're filling it, put the cap on, they're riddling through the holes. So when you're casting them, what happens is the air hits the feeder and it pushes the maggots out in the air. Well, I don't want that to happen. So the little tip is this. What you do, you put some maggots in as quick as you can, like that. And just before you swing it out and cast it, you just go to top of water and you go and you dip it in. That's all you have to do. Dip it under for literally a second and they all go boom, like that, and they don't come out. So when you're casting them, they're not coming out through the air. Just a little tip that keeps the maggots in the feeder. Just touch the water for a second like that, bring it straight back out, and it stops them. We do that a lot, especially when it's warm. When it's cold, they're not going to come out anyway, so don't worry about it. So how many maggots do you put on the hook? Right. It's a question that I got answered to me by the late great Ivan Marks. And he says to me, and I were fishing on River Trent and I was fishing 2 and 3 maggots and I wasn't catching. He says, just put one on. And I went, why would I put one on? He said, just put one on. I put one on, chucked it out, it's gone, dunk, and I caught a chub. And I went, can't believe that. And he went, they don't come out your feeder 2 at a time, do they? They only come out 1 at a time. And I went, wow, what a great, and it's true, innit? They don't come out the feeder in pairs, they come out 1 at a time. So the maggots that are coming out are falling ones. And he says, it don't look right with 2 on. So lots of times I fish for fish with 1 maggot on, loads of times. So because I remember what Ivan told me. However, it's not always the case, but when I'm fishing for roach, perch, things like that, usually single maggot is the best. When I'm fishing for skimmers, single maggot lots of times is the best. But when I'm fishing for other fish, when I'm fishing for carp and maybe bream, I'm going to fish 2. But when I go carp fishing properly, and when I go barbel fishing, I'm going to fish bigger baits. The fish want bigger baits generally, and I'm going to be fishing 3. Very rarely do I put more than 3 maggots on. I don't know why, I don't know what it is, but usually I find the number of maggots go to the size of the hook. So if I'm fishing a 22 or a 20, an 18, I'll fish single. If I'm fishing double, I'll put an 18. I'll put an 18 on. When I'm fishing 3, it'll be a 16, 14, or a 12. So what you're trying to do is balance the size of the hook to the number of maggots that you're putting on. But just remember this: they don't pick them up in 2s loose. They come out of the feeder in 1s, and I've never forgot what Ivan Marks told me about that. So when I'm struggling, even if I'm fishing for better fish, you can bet your bottom dollar lots of times I'll only have 1 maggot on. So never forget that. They don't come out in 2s, they come out of the feeder in 1s. So when I'm fishing and I'm missing bites, I usually scale down to the hook length. That if I'm getting lots of bites and missing them, there's 2 ways that I do it. One is to actually shorten the hook length until I start hooking the fish, and if I still don't hook them, let's say I'm fishing an 18 hook, what I do, I take it off and I put a 16 on, which is the next size up, and I thread the maggot on. So what I do, I actually put the point of the hook into the flat of the maggot, and I thread it so the hook is coming at least half out of the maggot, at least halfway along it, and that's called threading the maggot. That makes a huge difference. So when you're fishing for roach, maybe little hybrids, and you're missing them all the time, shorten your hook length and thread a maggot on. Sometimes it makes a massive difference. But don't use the same size hook. Because you're threading it inside, you'll be able to use the next size up, and you can also thread it in easier. So when I'm fishing maggots, one of my favourite additives to put on is that Sensate red powder. I think that there's something about that, right, and it's just very special when you put maggots, and it's so easy to actually put it on your maggots. All you need is maggots to start with, a bowl and a riddle, and your maggots. So when you get your maggots from tattle shop, you usually got some sawdust or some maize in or something like that. Well, the first thing you do, you need to get rid of all that. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to put them on a riddle, check all that away so there's nothing on them, and then put them back in your tub. So I've got rid of all my maize and all my sawdust, and all I've got is pure maggots. Now there's 2 ways of doing this. One is the easy way. Sometimes when you get maggots and they're not too dry, all you do is get the powder, sprinkle it on, sprinkle quite a bit on. You'll be surprised how much you can put on. Like that, just sprinkle it on, and that's it, done. That's all you've got to do, nothing more than that. And you'll see that the actual red maggots get a little bit redder. They've got the lovely Sensate flavour into the maggots with all the attractions and everything like that, and that's all you've got to do. The only time I change from that is if I think that the maggots are really dry and I think they need a little bit damper and for the powder to actually go into the maggots. I just dip my hand in the water, come out and go like that, and just move my hand around the maggots until it's got a little bit of dampness in it, and that's the only thing I do different to just taking it out of the tub. It's as simple as that. Honestly, you don't have to do anything else, and it's like I said, it's got all the colourings and all the attractants in now, and you can imagine that falling through water with all them attractions. It's got to catch more fish. Trust me, it's a great thing when you're maggot fishing, certainly in a feeder, because you get all the attractants on and the colourings on the feeder as well as it's falling through the water. It's as simple as that. Here's a great little tip for you. When you're maggot feeder fishing or on a bomb or whatever, and you're only fishing maggots, one of the things you do have outside of you are floating maggots. Because for 2 reasons. One, you can put a little hook on with 1 or 2 maggots, and because they're floating, they wriggle in the air, and sometimes when the fish are off the bottom, you can catch them that way. Or you can put a bigger hook on with a couple of maggots and it sinks really, really slow. It's a different fall. So when the fish are active in mid-water, you can put floating maggots on and you can make it sit up or fall really slow. So how do you do floating maggots? Well, it's simple. The first thing you need a container. You want it clean inside, like that, and then the lid, you want to cut it so it's got a hole, but it's also got a ledge round there, round the outside. That's really important, and I'll explain a little bit when I'm doing it. So once you've got your tub, all you want then is a bit of water. You don't need a lot of water. What you don't want to do is drown them. You're literally putting in the bottom a 1/16 or 2 or 3 mil in the bottom of the water, so the maggots can crawl about in the water. You don't want it too deep because you'll drown them and you'll kill them. And the next thing, and this is one mistake that people make, don't just take the maggots that you're going to put in there out of the fridge or out of the bag. They've got to be riddling. They've got to be riddling and moving, because otherwise they just drown them. Once you've got them riddling and moving, just get an handful and put them in. And you can see now that the maggots will be riddling about in that water. And it's one of the first things I do when I get to my peg, because it takes a while for this to happen, probably half an hour or so. The maggots will start riddling in the water till eventually they take the water in and you'll see that they'll float. And all they'll do, they'll start crawling up the side, and the idea of this ledge on your tub is so they don't actually crawl over. They'll come across the ledge and fall back into the water. And all you do is just leave it then. Just put it down, leave it, and then when you pick them up, all I do, I have another bucket at the side of me. I put 2 or 3 in to make sure I've got the floating ones on the hook. And that's an easy way to make floating maggots. But when you're fishing a maggot feeder, or when you're maggot fishing with a bomb or whatever, you always have floating maggots at the side of you, just in case, to slow the bait falling through the water. Or sometimes you can put like a 16 hook on with 3 and 4 maggots and they'll riddle in mid-water like that, and they'll sit up off the bottom. It's amazing how many fish you can catch. But most of the time I use them for is so the fall is slower and it's more sort of neutral. So remember, 2 or 3 mil, 1/16 of an inch of water, so that riddling and working about in it, and that's all you've got to do to get them perfect. Floating maggots when you're fishing, maggot fishing, is essential. Well, I'll tell you something. It's another one of them hide. And I've got to say, I've absolutely loved this. Maggot feeder fishing for hide. I don't know how many we've had, but they're beautiful fish. Honestly, it was -2 this morning, and you can still catch these. And this is a good fish. I bet this is one of them £1.5-ers. A lovely fish to finish a fantastic day on. Oh my goodness, look at that. It's nearly £2 that. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Oh. How about that to finish your day's fishing on? £2 hide. Look at that. Beautiful them, aren't they? Well, I'll tell you one thing. My first time to Springvale, but without a shadow of a doubt, not my last. -2, catching fish like that on a maggot feeder. It don't get much better than that. I had a fantastic day.